switching to Jen Burns, who is the lead for Attack for Cloud. Take it away, Jen.
Sure. Thanks, Adam. And hey, everybody. I'm Jen Burns, lead of Attack for Cloud, like Adam mentioned, and really excited to talk to you all about what's new and upcoming in this area for Attack. So to give a bit of a background on Attack for Cloud, it was actually at the first ATT&CK where Dave Harold and Ryan Kovar presented this slide that I graciously stole from them and can't take credit for. In their talk, they expressed a need for expanding Attack into the cloud. This also ended up being a fairly common request from the community. So about a year ago, or what now I guess seems like about 10 years ago in COVID years, the Attack team was able to turn that cloud frown upside down and add cloud techniques into Attack. So Attack for Cloud was added as a part of Enterprise Attack. It really was and continues to be a community effort. Almost 100% of the initial release of Attack for Cloud was contributed by the community. That initial and also the current release cover AWS, Azure, and GCP, as well as Office 365, Azure Active Directory, and also kind of a generalized SaaS platform. With the release of sub-techniques in July came a refactor of Attack for Cloud to also add sub-techniques. With that update, we also added some new infrastructure as a service techniques and sub-techniques like modify cloud compute infrastructure within defense evasion. And we made some improvements to ensure that every technique in cloud had some sort of description on how it fits into cloud. As always, though, if you see gaps in the cloud matrices, please feel free to send us new technique and sub-technique submissions. We love contributions. We definitely hope to just continue to work with you to make Attack for Cloud as usable as possible for the community. So with making things as usable as possible in mind, just wanted to take a moment to kind of explain what we consider to be the scope of Attack for Cloud as an Attack team. Really, you can use Attack, including cloud, in whatever way works for you. But this is how we view like adding techniques into a cloud platform within Attack. One thing that we determine is if the technique is generally visible via cloud data sources. If you're familiar with the shared responsibilities model of cloud service providers, these are data sources that you as a customer have visibility into and are generally responsible for. To think of it in kind of the opposite way, the cloud matrices generally don't contain techniques that only the cloud service providers would have visibility into. We might find that there are exceptions to this over time, especially when it comes to SaaS providers. But for the most part, this is what we're scoping for. And then additionally, when we scope cloud techniques, the team works to minimize that duplication of techniques in cloud across those found in like the Windows, Linux, and Mac OS matrices. Attack for Cloud is really meant to provide a separate layer of coverage of adversary behavior that's focused specifically on cloud. So for example, consider like an adversary creating a cron job on a Linux EC2 instance or an Azure VM. Even though that technique was carried out in the cloud environment, that's covered by the Linux matrix. So we generally wouldn't add that technique to cloud unless there's something that makes it specifically unique to cloud. So to kind of start digging in a bit into the future of Attack for Cloud, first thing I want to talk about is the future of cloud platforms. And as a heads up, none of these proposed changes are going to be added to Attack until 2021. We want to make sure to give you time to give us your feedback on this and plan for any of these updates. So right now on the left, these are the current platforms in Attack for Cloud. After doing some research, talking with folks in the community, we're planning in a future release to consolidate Azure, AWS, and GCP into a single infrastructure as a service platform, and then continue to add additional SaaS platforms to Attack. There are a few SaaS platforms we've been considering for potential future inclusion into Attack. We'd also be really curious on your feedback here and your in the wild experience with adversaries here, so we can kind of continue to increase coverage in this space. So some of you are probably wondering why that generalization into infrastructure as a service. Well, the first reason is that the current infrastructure as a service platforms already share most techniques across attack. We realize there are some exceptions here and there will be in the future. So those exceptions we plan to document in the descriptions and other fields of the individual techniques for transparency. Another reason for this change is it helps to broaden the scope of attack across other cloud service providers, in addition to Azure, AWS, and GCP. And then finally, and probably most importantly, the community feedback we've received here favors a single infrastructure as a service platform. A survey at the EU Attack conference earlier in the year showed that many supported this. And pretty much the first question I usually get from people when I talk about Attack for Cloud is why the infrastructure as a service platforms are split out. So we're definitely interested in your feedback here, though. Please feel free to reach out once again with any thoughts you may have on this. Next thing I want to talk about is plans for cloud data sources moving forward. So right now, almost every cloud data source, especially in infrastructure as a service, is just logs. We realize that these may not be the most helpful data sources, as they're pretty general and can be really vast. So we plan for some future updates here as well. I'm not sure how many of you have seen Jose Rodriguez's blog post about the future of data sources for enterprise attack, but we're also moving in that direction with our cloud data sources. So the idea here is that you have a single data source. It has one or more of these things called data components. And then as contributed from the attack team or the community, there can be mappings to relevant events and APIs from the various cloud service providers and SaaS providers. We really hope to move away from that general logs approach and start moving towards something that's a more meaningful set of data sources for our users. So here's an example of what the instance data source may look like. Shout out to Matt Bajek on the attack team who did a lot of this work. So we have the data source on the left, which is instance in this case. Then we have multiple data components that basically consist of like operations on that data source. And then you can map one or more relevant events to each data component based on the cloud service provider or SaaS provider's offerings. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do in this area as a team, but we really wanted to get you all kind of a sneak peek so you know what our plans are here. And just to recap what we're planning on updating cloud data sources. First off, we want to ensure that we're consistent with the rest of enterprise. I do recommend checking out that blog by Jose to see what our plans are in that area. We also just want to make sure data sources are more meaningful. Feedback suggests that that everything is logs approach isn't super helpful for building things like detections. So we want to refactor to align to events and API calls instead. And also we want to ensure that our data sources approach is consistent with that plan for consolidating AWS, Azure, and GCP into infrastructure as a service as a platform. We're hoping to make the data sources and data components general enough across the cloud service providers that they're usable across all. And finally, I just want to put out a call to the community to help us make Attack for Cloud as useful as possible. First, please let us know if you have any thoughts on how we can improve Attack for Cloud. You're the ones with boots on the ground using it. We want to make sure that it works for you. Also, we need your help to continue to add to and improve Attack for Cloud. Please reach out if you have in the wild visibility into what adversaries are doing in this space and send us your contributions. Also, if you have opinions on the future platforms or data sources updates that we're planning, please let us know. Nothing is set in stone yet. We want to make sure that these changes are what's going to work the best for you. And as always, you can reach out to us at attack@mitre.org with any of that feedback. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at SnareGen if you like drums, cats, or attack. And then you can follow Attack at MITRE ATT&CK to stay up to date. Thanks.